This is an episode of What the Frick Live. If you enjoy it, you can listen to all their content at forbiddenknowledge.news and all podcast platforms. Just click the link in the description to get access to all their content now.
Hey everybody, it is Friday night, What the Frick Live on August the 26th, 2022. And I have a special co-host this evening, Ryder Lee from Raised by Giants. Hey Ryder, good to see you.
Hello, Emily. Thanks so much for inviting me on to co-host this with you. And I'm very looking forward to it with Brett Johnson. I've watched the documentary on Netflix and I'm really excited to speak with him. So
yes, that Netflix, everybody, I have been putting this out on social media the last few days. You have to watch Web of Make-Believe, and each episode gets better and better and better. And then you get to episode 5 and 6, because that's a 2-part. And it blows your mind up. But Brett was like kind of a little bit of fresh air when you get to him, because he has a great personality. But we're gonna be bringing him on here in a second, and we're gonna be talking about how and why. I don't know how he even got involved in this, because he's from Kentucky and I'm in Kentucky. So that's why, how did a man from Hazard, Kentucky be one of the most wanted cyber criminals in the United States? Like, I never even heard of this story. The only story I've ever heard of in Kentucky with anything that's deal with this is like the Buffalo Trace liquor scandal. I don't know if you've heard of that, Ryder. You're from Point Pleasant.
No, I haven't heard of that. I don't know where that is.
So, well, anyway, that was a big, huge scandal and things that went on. And there's a documentary about that, but I never heard of Brett Johnson. And I'm so glad I did, because he is super fun and we're going to be bringing him on. But real quick, Ryder is coming on this week because Marianne has been sick. So please think of Marianne, pray for her, send positive vibes that way. COVID and some other things. So Marianne will be on the next time. But Ryder, thank you so much. And you have a podcast if you want to tell people real quick about where they can find you.
Yes, you can follow, subscribe to Raised by Giants on YouTube, ODYSEE, Rockfin, anywhere that you find podcasts on, listen to podcasts on, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts. And I do 2 shows over there a week, one on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Mountain Time and Fridays at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. So, thank you. And I'm really excited to talk to Brett, because I'm pretty sure that I might have bought a Beanie Baby from him off of eBay at one point in time.
Was the name Peanut?
Yeah. Peanut the Bear.
Penny L.A. Shepherd, yes, Mothman Prophecies, and that's about 45 minutes for me too. So Ryder, you got to come back home, visit home. We got to do Mothman. But I want to get into this because this hour obviously is going to go by super fast, and he has a story and a half. And I always introduce our guests, but I don't think that I could ever do it. I'm going to have the guest introduce himself in this video. Hold on, he's not seeing this yet. Here we go. I'm having the guest introduce himself. Here we go.
Brett Johnson, former United States most wanted cyber criminal, now good guy. That's right, good guy. Or as the United States Secret Service put it, the original Internet Godfather. Well, Brett, how did you get that title? Well, don't worry. I'll tell you how I get that title. Hell, I do it every single week. 39 felonies, a place on the United States most wanted list. I escaped from prison. Did you really escape from prison? Yes, I really did escape from prison. And I also built and ran the first organized cybercrime community. It was called Shadow Crew. It was a precursor of today's darknet and darknet markets. It laid the foundation for the way modern cybercrime channels operate today. And you better believe your ass that will land you in prison. Deservedly so. Now, look, there's a whole story behind all that. We don't have time for that today because today, right now, it's time for the Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode.
Brett Johnson. That should be a t-shirt. I bet your ass.
I'm a Muppet of a man.
I saw that bit. That was awesome.
Hell, I would date me after seeing that video.
Swipe right. Here we go, ladies.
Lick your bald head.
Exactly. Oh, it's so shiny. I had to shave it. I was on Lex Friedman's podcast. I saw the video and it looked like I had the mange. I was like, shit, I'm not doing that. So I just cut it all off.
You should grow a mullet back there. I think it's called
I had a mullet back when I was committing crime. That's right.
You could do one of those in the back. One of those skull mullets where you're bald on top and then you just have like a giant mullet. Like
I like it. I like it. I'm not going to lie to you. I could do that.
Real quick, I want to put this in here really fast. If you're watching this right now, please share this out on any kind of, we're live on Rumble, Odyssey, and Facebook. Please share this out. It helps our guests, it helps our show, and it helps our network. So please do that. So thank you, Brett, for coming on. A Kentucky man, I had to get you on here. Like, there's no.
Well, Emma told me you were from Kentucky, and I was like, hell, we got to help each other out. Let's do this.
Well, and I'd like to start out with the Beanie Baby stuff, to be honest.
Everybody likes the Beanie Babies, except the poor victim that I ripped off of $1,500. So what happens is where did it begin? Where to start on that? So my entry into cybercrime, my first online crime, I was in Lexington, Kentucky. I was going to UK for theater and English, and I was a crook. Doing small scams and hustles. I started crime when I was 10 years old. So 10 shoplifting food for me and my sister. I'm from Hazard, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Hazard, Kentucky. If you don't have a job, you may be involved in some sort of scam, hustle, fraud, whatever you want to call it. Mommy, my mom, was basically the captain of the entire fraud industry. So this is a woman. She steals a 108,000-pound Caterpillar D9 bulldozer. She takes a slip and fall in a convenience store. We had a neighbor.
What did she do with the bulldozer? What did she do with the bulldozer?
We illegally strip mined coal. So you got it. We had a D9 dozer. We had a case. I think it was a case 945, big ass, loader dozer. Of course, you can't. A lot of people don't have the money to buy those. So they are to be found in Eastern Kentucky.
She wanted it and she took it.
She wanted it and she took it. And I've never talked about that before, but we went broke wildcatting coal. We didn't have the money for permitting and certainly not reclamation or anything like that. So went broke wildcatting coal. Lived out of a 40-foot office trailer for 18 months. Me, my sister, I was very young, probably 14 or 15 at that point in time. Me, my sister, my stepfather, my mom, and he had a work hand. We lived in a 40-foot trailer for about 18 months, lived off of deer meat and cornmeal until my stepdad, he starts this logging business. And the way they got the equipment for the logging business, my mom,
the bulldozer,
she cons this guy into giving her a small loader, a dozer, and there was another piece of equipment too, a skidder is what it was. And cons him into that, agrees to make, monthly payments. She makes the first, 4 or 5 payments. Then he comes to try to repossess the stuff.
and she starts screaming that he tried to rape her. So at that
Wow.
point, at that point, he's like, shit, I'm not doing this. And they got to keep the equipment. So that was my mom. My first.
She was a hustler.
Yeah, and I grew up in that environment with not only mom, but everyone in the family, that side of the family, committing crime. Branched off on my own, committed faked a car accident to get the insurance money, used that money to move from Hazard to Lexington to go to UK, got married. And my first online crime, I was doing these little scams around Lexington, not really making a lot of money or anything like that. Found eBay, really liked eBay, didn't know how to make money on eBay.
Hold on, real quick, Brett. I don't mean to interrupt. I'm so sorry, but eBay is not how eBay is today. When was this? What year?
This was
90.
2000s. This would have been 95, 96.
Yeah. Okay. So mid 90s. So it's not the eBay that we know today.
Right.
When everyone was paying with money orders.
And these days, the reason eBay is what it is today is because of what me and Shadow Crew, the group that I created, did to eBay.
Okay.
To PayPal, everything.
Go with eBay. Tell us about this.
So found eBay, didn't really know how to make money on eBay. Bill O'Reilly, though, he was hosting Inside Edition, and they were doing a show on Beanie Babies. And the one they were profiling was Peanut, the Royal Blue Elephant, selling for $1,500. I'm sitting there watching it like, shit, I need to find me a Peanut. Skipped class the next day. I was pretty naive. Skipped class, went around to all the Hallmark stores the next day. Took a few hours to figure out, idiot, he's not in the Hallmark stores. His ass is on eBay for $1,500. But they had these little gray Beanie Baby elephants for $8. So what I did was bought the gray Beanie Baby, bought the gray one for $8, stopped by Kroger on the way home, picked up a pack of blue Rit dye, went home, tried to dye the little guy. Turns out they're made out of polyester, don't hold dye very well.
Is this why you have
that is background? Peanut. That's $1,500.
This is why the blue background now. I get it now. It's not necessarily UK Wildcats blue. It's all roads lead to Peanut.
All roads lead to Peanut. So I dyed this gray Beanie Baby elephant blue. The dye didn't hold. Looked like it had the damn mange. Ripped the lady off of $1,500. Found a picture of a real one online. She wins the bid. As soon as she wins the bid, I sent her a message. The message was, hey, lady, congratulations on winning the bid. You did an outstanding job. I don't know you. I don't even know if I can trust you. What I need you to do is go down to the U.S. Postal Service, pick up a couple of money orders for $1,500, send those to me. As soon as I get them, I'll send you your animal. She believed that. She sends me the money orders. I send her this mangy-looking thing in the mail. Got a phone call. The phone call was, hey, I didn't order this. My response was, lady, you ordered a blue elephant. I sent you a blue-ish elephant. And that's the first online crime I committed. That's the first lesson of cybercrime as well. You delay a victim long enough, a lot of them get so exasperated, they throw their hands in the air, walk away. You don't hear from them again, and none of them complain to law enforcement. Same principle today.
Ryder? You got any follow-up for that one?
Just that I remember the Beanie Baby craze back in the day. And me and my dad, we would be on eBay all the time because I wanted Beanie Babies. And I remember getting some ones like that. Like we would pay like $20, but it wasn't anything like $1,500.
Right.
It was like $20, $30. And then the Beanie Baby we would get was nothing like what was in the picture. But yeah, I mean, that was just $20, $30. No big deal, really. I mean, I guess it's kind of, shitty or whatever, but it wasn't anything huge. So it made sense.
And, the thing is that the only difference between someone ripping you off of the $20 and me doing someone for $1,500 is how willing the criminal is, in this case me, to try to victimize someone. That's really it. Can you scale that crime up to where you're actually convincing someone to send you $1,500? And because of the way trust works on the internet, you certainly can, all day, every day.
Yeah, it's also interesting too because we used to have, because I'm from West Virginia, I'm from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, right beside Kentucky. Right. We used to have these little satellite cards, right, that you could put inside of your satellite box that would give you all of the different direct TV channels for free.
They got all kinds of cards.
Well, that's how Shadow Crew gets started, is with the satellite cards. So,
you guys were doing that?
So what happens is, and That was my first online crime, that Beanie Baby. And I go into pirated software, then I go into mod chips, first into gaming systems, then into cable TV boxes. Then I start programming those satellite DSS cards, those for RCAs. Started doing that. I don't know if you knew this or not, but about the same time, a Canadian judge, this is the mid to late 90s, a Canadian judge ruled that it was legal for Canadian citizens to pirate those signals. And he said in court, he was like, hey, since RCA doesn't sell the systems up here, my citizens can pirate those signals. Well, what happens is overnight in the United States, little industry pops up. You go down to Best Buy, you buy the system for $100, take it out in the parking lot, open it up, pull the system out, pull the card out, throw the system away, program the card, ship it to Canada, $500 a pop. Started doing that, making a lot of money. I wasn't able to fill all the orders. I had so many orders, I couldn't fill them all. Quickly, and I mean quickly, thought to myself, why do I need to fill any of them? They're in Canada. I'm down here. Who are they going to complain to? It's illegal. So I didn't fill any of the orders, stole even more money, got worried about how much was coming in, figured the best thing that I could do is get a fake ID, use that to open up a bank account, launder the money through that fraudulent bank account. No idea where to get a fake ID. So I got online, looked around, thought I found a guy, sent him $200, sent him my picture. Dude rips me off. And I got pissed off. And the result of that was Shadow Crew. So Shadow Crew, there's 3 websites. There's Counterfeit Library, Shadow Crew, Carter Planet. I built and ran both Counterfeit Library and Shadow Crew. Those 2 sites specifically are the genesis of modern cybercrime as we know it today. Before those 2 sites come into play, the only real avenue you had to commit online fraud or online crime was an IRC chat session, this internet relay chat, this rolling chat board where you had no idea who the hell you were talking to, if you could trust that individual, if they had a product or service, if they had it, if it worked, or if they were just going to rip you off because everyone there was a crook. Shadow Crew, which she's showing where the Secret Service busted us, Shadow Crew gave a trust mechanism that criminals could use. It was the first dark web type forum and marketplace of its type. Even before the dark web was actually a thing, Shadow Crew was that precursor of that. And because of that trust mechanism, because of what we built with Shadow Crew, that laid the foundation for the way most modern cybercrime channels continue to operate today.
Was this in the early 2000s that this
it
website
was? So Counterfeit Library comes into play around 97, 98. Shadow Crew goes live 2001, 2002. We make the front cover of Forbes August of 2004. October 26, 2004, United States Secret Service arrest 33 people, 6 countries, 6 hours. I'm the only guy publicly mentioned as getting away. They pick me up 4 months later, and they give me a job. The Secret Service does. And I'm the idiot that continues to break the law from inside Secret Service offices for the next 10 months until they find out about it. I take off on a cross-country crime spree, steal $600,000 in the space of 4 months, wake up one morning on the United States Most Wanted list, go to Disney World, get arrested at Disney World, go to prison, escape prison, get arrested again, and finally serve out my time.
Listen, you are an entrepreneur, 110%. You never give up, Brett.
Well, you know, Josie Wells, you know, that line, endeavor to persevere.
Wasn't it, though, that the CIA, they weren't using any VPNs or any kind of disguising of their IP address whenever they were getting in there and trying to infiltrate Shadow Crew, right? So you were able to see that before they kind of came in and started taking out these people. So you got out before that, right?
Yeah, it actually gets better than that. We had certainly law enforcement and government agencies, they really didn't understand how to shield their identity back then. So we had the raw IPs coming in from Pentagon, from .mil, from Secret Service, FBI, worldwide law enforcement, things like that. We also had this individual named Enhance. So you may remember in the early 2000s, Paris Hilton had her T-Mobile cell phone contact list published. That was one of my guys named Enhance. Well, he also had intercepted text messages of the Secret Service investigating Shadow Crew. So we were well aware of what was going on at that point in time. I was top of the heap. What happens is I was doing this thing called tax return identity theft. So the reason your all's tax returns are delayed every single year is because of the son of a bitch you're talking to tonight.
I got questions about this IRS stuff coming up.
Oh,
too,
I bet.
So we'll get to that.
But I stepped aside. When I stepped aside, my forum techie, guy named Albert Gonzalez, he goes on to become the largest credit card thief in history. He gets caught in New Jersey cashing out counterfeit debit cards. And flips, goes to work for the Secret Service. Secret Service had no idea how to track us, how to catch us. So they actually asked the kid, they were like, what would you do to catch these guys? And Albert's like, well, I would use a VPN. And they were like, well, what's a VPN? And he tells them, so they're like, shit, that's a good idea. So I had stepped aside. Albert comes in and becomes the lead of Shadow Crew, and he makes everyone start to use this VPN, which is owned by the Secret Service. Shadow Crew makes the front cover of Forbes. A couple of months later, Shadow Crew's busted by the United States Secret Service.
Because they were funneling all the information and all the chats through the Shadow Crew
So
into
all
their
the
own
stolen,
private VPN.
Yeah, all the stolen credit card numbers, all the drop addresses, all the payment details, all that was going through in the space of, probably 4 or 5 months. I think they ended up getting like $7 million worth of different, stolen credit cards and all that they could use. And it kind of rewrote the way law enforcement views and prosecutes online crime these days.
So my question is, how did you get from Beanie Babies to that, Brad?
So what happened? And it's kind of weird. So I grew up, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
committing crime when I was 10. I grew up knowing how to do or committing insurance fraud, charity fraud, faking cars, faking stolen accidents, burning homes for cash, trafficking drugs, all these other things, breaking and entering. So I had that criminal mindset. My first online crime is the Beanie Baby thing. I got away with that, and I kept going. And I'm not an idiot. I'm not a slouch, and I already had the criminal mindset going on. So when you think about cybercrime, what it really is, it's figuring out ways to take brick and mortar crimes and do the online version of that, is what that is. And because of the way trust works online versus in the real world, the way it works online is it's much easier to establish trust with a potential victim, whether it be an individual or an organization. So understanding that, you start to see, okay, what does it take to get a company or a retailer to trust you online? Is it as simple as a login and password? Is it a credit card number? What tools are needed to get that merchant to trust you in order to send you a laptop? So that's what you look at as things like that. So we were really big about reading white papers on security companies, about really testing things over and over. And that's one of the things that you see on cybercrime environments. A lot of people that are victimized think that it's a single attacker. It's never a single attacker. You've got websites these days that are millions of members large, and all of them are pretty open source. They share and exchange information. They collaborate together, and they look at different targets, different schemes, different tools in order to profit. And it becomes it's a very profitable enterprise for criminals.
Thinking of profit, though, PayPal too was coming up, and they really didn't know what they were doing, right? Because you did a lot of transactions through PayPal.
Yeah, so we ate them alive. We did. For eBay, for example, we were fishing out accounts. We were selling, fake items, stuff like that. eBay used to be pretty wide open. You could pull someone's real email address. You could easily get them off site to talk to them. You could look up their phone numbers. None of that was hidden. Because of the fraud that we were committing, eBay establishes the direct messaging system. They come up with all these other types of security features as well. PayPal, again, when it started, was wide open. I mean, completely wide open. They would transfer money after the accounts were shut down. It was people trusted PayPal because there had never been anything around like that before, so they were anxious to use it. And it was when I first started defrauding PayPal, I would profit usually $4,000 to $6,000 a month just through PayPal.
Wow.
And then it increased, where you're getting $20,000 to $30,000 a month just on that.
Did you know that your body and well-being are being continuously threatened by something you don't even see? That threat is based on electromagnetic radiation, or e-smog. On an average day, you get exposed to 20 to 40 sources of negative EMF, such as your Wi-Fi router, Bluetooth headphones, cell towers, even the dirty electricity hidden in your walls. This radiation creates a long list of problems that impact your everyday wellness and well-being. Check out the Centropics Bubble. The Bubble is a breakthrough miniature active neutralizing frequency device that literally fits in your pocket. The Bubble uses EMF radiation protection, which makes positive electromagnetic frequencies that are aligned with your body and the earth. The Bubble is programmed and charged by impulses from a specifically developed bioresonance radiation technique. Frequencies that counter interference fields, known as electrosmog or electromagnetic pollution, are recorded as information by the Bubble. Best of all, you can take the Bubble with you wherever you go. Rediscover the joy and wonderful passion of being alive and reclaim your vitality and energy. Just go to getthefrequency.com or click the link in the description to get your Centropics Bubble today.
Then we have like Venmo and Cash App. Like there's all kinds of schemes on Venmo and stuff like now. You know what I mean? It's just seems like there's just another thing that kind of pops up that people can figure out a way to scam it.
Well, you know, the big one right now is Zelle fraud. I mean, Venmo, certainly you can defraud someone with Venmo because you can't really recall the money. Cash App, you can launder money pretty easily through Cash App, things like that. Zelle is the big one for cyber criminals right now because what's going on is you have to understand that everyone's information is available. I can go on the dark web or one of these criminal marketplaces. I can buy your social, your date of birth for about $3.70. From there, I go on the dark web. I can pull some of your financial information, maybe your bank account logins and details like that. That's going to run me $20 or $40. So the way Zelle fraud's working right now, I'll get your background check. I'll get some financial data of yours, some logins, some stuff like that. I'll send you a text message that looks like it comes from your bank, and I'll say, hey, the text message will say, you know, Wells Fargo, we've approved the money transfer that you've initiated for $2,000. If you didn't initiate this, press N. So you'll press N, you'll send the text message back. You'll immediately get a phone call that looks like it comes from Wells or Citibank or what have you, but it's not. It's me that's spoofing Wells' number at that point. I get you on the phone and I start quoting back your background data. I quote back your social security number, your date of birth, some of your financial transactions. I've got your background check in front of me so I can talk about your personal history a little bit and convince you that I am customer service for your financial institution. Once I say that, I'm like, hey, you didn't initiate the transfer. That's fine. What we're going to do is let me log into the account, make sure everything's all right. I act like I'm logging into the account, and all of a sudden, oh, wait, you're not logged into the account right now? Well, someone is in your account right now. We need to make sure that your money's safe. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a temporary account. I want to have you send your funds to this temporary account so that no one can get to them. And I tricked you into sending Zelle to me. Once that transaction is done, Zelle is a permanent transfer. The banks don't cover you on it. Anything else, the money belongs to me at that point. And it's a very profitable type of crime. And all that's a social engineering crime as well.
Yeah, psychological manipulation.
Yeah.
Tricking people into thinking that it's their idea.
That's it.
So really quickly though, is this like in-house, when I say in-house, like United States, or are there other forms of like Ukrainian, Russians? Because we always hear about Russians hacking stuff and intervening and things. Is this a worldwide like network?
Okay, so good question.
Okay.
For cybercrime to be successful, three things have to take place. You have to gather data, you have to commit a crime, and then finally you have to cash it out, put cash in pocket. What you see is that one single criminal, one guy, can't do all three things. He can do one, sometimes two, rarely all three. That's why you have the dark web, the forums, the marketplaces, why you have Telegram, Discord channels like that. They exist so that one specific criminal can network with other criminals who are good in areas where they are not. So it's never a single attacker. It's always an organization who's hitting you, okay? Now, the reason that one person can't do all three, there's two reasons. Either there's a skill gap. That specific criminal doesn't know how to do one of those aspects. Maybe a man-in-the-middle attack where they can't harvest credit card details from a shopping cart. or maybe they don't know how to launch a phishing attack or what have you. That's the first reason, a skill gap. The other reason is a problem with geographic location. That specific criminal is in a geographic area where they cannot fulfill one of those three necessities. Typically, the laundering aspect, putting cash in pocket. You see a lot of criminals that they have access to the data. They know how to commit the crime. They're in the EU, they're in the Ukraine,
Wow.
they're in Russia, they're in South America someplace. During the pandemic, we saw this with unemployment fraud. You had a ton of fraudsters that were out of country. They were committing fraud against different states' unemployment systems. The problem is they could not withdraw cash in their home country. They had to have cash withdrawn in the United States. So they relied on money mules in the United States to pull that money out of ATMs. They'd give them a cut of it, and then they'd take probably 70% of whatever the profit was from there.
So you mentioned mules real quick, and what I go to, and hopefully this doesn't get banned on Facebook right now, but election mules, which deals with dead people. But but you did something, because I was listening to another interview that you had earlier this week with the IRS and filing income tax returns with dead people. Like,
sure.
Is it that really that easy to grab that information and manipulate it, especially within our election systems and then in our financial refunds?
So I actually answered that question on an episode of the Brett Johnson Show just a few weeks ago too. I had access to the California State Death Registry. So the way the federal government knows that you're dead, a Social Security death benefit has to be filed for that person who has died. All right. So prior to 1998, the only person or the only people who could file for that was a relative, a member of the family. After 1998, if you passed away, the hospital could do that or a mortuary could do that. So what happens is, what you find out is, for people who died before 1998, most of those people, while the state knows that they're deceased, the federal government does not. So there's this thing called the dead baby method. What you can actually do if you're creating identities, what you can do is you can go to California State Death Registry. You find a child who was born in one state, died in another. That's your identity. All right. So then you order the death certificate so that you can find out the mother's maiden name, the father's name, everything else. And then you order the birth certificate to make sure that it's not stamped deceased. If it's not stamped deceased, that is an identity that you can use. Okay. Now you can file taxes on that, like I was doing. One of the things that we were also doing is we were creating complete functionable identities using dead people. And what I mean by that is, you can get a driver's license. You can get prior to 9/11, you could get a passport and then build an identity on that dead person and live as that dead person. Just a few weeks ago, there was a couple of KGB agents in friggin' Hawaii that had been living on identities of dead babies for like 40 years in the United States. All right. So your question
Wow.
is, your question was asking about voter fraud or the ballots. And here's the answer. Okay. One of the things that we were doing when we were creating these identities using dead people, one of the steps is, like I said, you get the death certificate, then you order the birth certificate to make sure that it is not stamped deceased. And then you go on from there and you start building pieces of identity. All right. So one of the pieces of identity that you tend to get is a voter registration card. It's very easy to register a dead person to vote. As a matter of fact, on the show that I did on my channel, I actually pulled up the identity of some dead person that I had registered in the state of North Carolina back in 2002 to vote. And he was no longer on record, because what happens is, if you don't vote for like 4 years, they remove your registration. But it shows that he was actually active and was voting, not voting, but could have voted if he wanted to. So even today, it's very easy to register those types of identities to vote, even today. So I hope that answers the question.
And is it that easy to also still obtain, because this goes into the IRS, and like they're getting ready to do 87,000 new IRS.
They're hiring a whole passel. I'm hoping
And they can use deadly weapons. They can use deadly force too.
I'm just hoping that, if we get a Republican, Senate and House in there, that maybe they'll go ahead and fire those 87,000 agents. That's my hope.
So is it that easy with what you were doing and filing the IRS income tax returns? Because I listened to the interview you did. You were doing this like every 6 minutes per dead person.
Right. So I got to the point where I could file a tax return once every 6 minutes. What I would do is I would file tax returns 3 days of the week. On the fourth day, I would take a road trip, plot out a map of ATMs. The next 2 days, I would spend cashing out. Typically, I would steal $160,000 a week. $150,000 of that would go in a backpack. I was living in Charleston, South Carolina at that point in time. I had a spare bedroom. I'd take the backpack, open up the bedroom door, toss the backpack in there. And then at some point through those years, you open up the door of that bedroom and you see all those backpacks and you're like, shit, I got to do something with all that. And then you learn how to launder money at that point. It was that easy, and it remained that easy from when I started that crime in 2002 up through 2011, when when the IRS started to try to implement security on that type of fraud at that point. But it went for about 9 years with no security at all. I'm
going to let Ryder follow up with this guy. I know he has a question. I do have one more thing here with this dead people. So if these dead people voted, would we be able to cross-examine these accounts, and would they have a income tax return filed too?
They may not have an income tax return filed. All right. They may not have that, but depending, you would have to figure out which databases were being used to register those names to vote. So you'd look at the California Death Registry, all right? But every state has indexes of dead people, all right? So and the problem is that states are not very good about reciprocating with other states. That's one of the ways that they used to be able to get fake driver's licenses issued from using a fake driver's license. You'd get an Indiana driver's license, a fake one, then you'd travel down to Mississippi, and because the states did not have reciprocation, you'd walk in with your fake driver's license in Mississippi, and you could pick up a real Mississippi driver's license in the place of that Indiana one. But so you have to figure out, are the states reciprocating? Was that individual ever reported on the master Social Security death index that the federal government runs? Probably not, if they died before 1998. And then you start having to run it from there, is what you have to do. Massive amounts of dead people voting would be, I mean, you could do it. You give me a team of people, and I can certainly screw with some things.
I'll be ashamed. I will screw with things.
Yeah, but you could do that. The easier way to do that is to manipulate a population. I have this thing that since I ran Shadow Crew, we were always talking that the statement that I had was the perception of truth is more important than the truth itself. Facts don't matter. The only thing that matters is what I can convince you of.
Perception of facts.
That's it.
Perception of truth.
The perception of truth is more important than the truth itself. I don't care what the truth is. What I care about is what I can convince you of. If you think of it from a cybercrime point of view, what's more important? That you own the account, or that I convince the bank that I'm you and get access to your account? Okay? Same thing with fake news, whatever you want to say. Whatever's going on right there, it's the manipulation of that population. That's what's important. And that's one of the things that we continue to see more and more every single day. You know, you see deep fakes, you see all these things that are popping up that have that idea behind it that, hey, the truth doesn't matter. What matters is, what can I convince you of? Yeah. Okay.
Ryder, Ryder, see if you have a follow-up. And I do have a question in the chat too. So after Ryder, I'm gonna pull it up because it's a pretty good question.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. You're right on, Brad. I saw a video today of this girl on Instagram that literally created an AI video that looked 100% real, legit. And
Yeah.
she did it through deep fakes and like all
Right.
this AI coding and everything. And it looked 100% real. She even changed her voice. And it was a completely separate person. It was a completely
Right.
made up person that she put into the internet. I'm like, holy shit, nothing is real anymore, you know?
Now take that, but add some sort of nefarious motive for that. For example, you've got say the police shoot some individual, all right? Someone goes on and they remove the individual that they shot had a weapon in his hand. They digitally remove the weapon from that person's hand. It gets released to the media. The media publishes that. The law enforcement has shot an unarmed individual. What happens?
Yeah.
Violence pops off, potential riots, everything else. Then later, it's discovered. Well, it was a fake video. They had removed the weapon, but who cares at that point?
CGI is so
right
advanced.
Or you get a deep fake of someone saying, and it's happened on the stock market. You get a deep fake of someone saying, "Hey, we're selling all this stock."
GameStop.
Right. GameStop. A lot of money made on GameStop.
Love all them Reddit people.
Right.
I don't know if you're on Reddit, Brett.
So
I'm sure
the potential.
But...
I am the potential of damage from not verifying some of these videos or stories is pretty high. We've just not really seen that yet.
Well, just really quick, I don't mean to bring this to this, but like just in the Ukraine war and the stuff with Russia, they used a clip that actually had stormtroopers in it from Star Wars, and I was like looking at this thing, and and then I was like, what did I see? Right. I see, the stormtroopers, and then I go on, I say Telegram. I'm like, and then I see it. Everybody's already also saw it. So everything and anything that's put out there, you need to cross-reference it and research everything yourself.
Always verify.
The truth is in the people. It's not in any of this social media news channels and everything. But we do have a question here in chat. Steve Holbrook asked this question. Any recommendations on how someone can defend themselves if their info is already out there and collected?
You see, that's the question that I like, because I usually get a question. I usually get the question of, well, what can I do to make sure my information is not compromised? This dude understands your information is already compromised. That's a fact. All right. So you accept that. What can I do to make sure if someone like me gets your information, they can't use it? And you can do some stuff. The first thing you do is you put a credit freeze on every single person in the house. Credit freezes are free. They've been free since 2018. Unfortunately, only 12% of the United States population has a credit freeze in place. So freeze the credit of everyone, including kids, okay? Including your kids, because kids are the number one victims of identity theft, 1 in 4, all right? That's the first thing. Understand that a credit freeze only stops new account fraud. Works great for kids. For adults, we've got credit cards, we've got bank accounts. A credit freeze doesn't stop that fraud. So you have to monitor accounts, place alerts on accounts where you can. Discover Card, for example, they have a $0 alert, meaning if I go on the dark web, buy your Discover Card for $12, which is what they sell it for, I ping the card just to see if it's alive. You get a text message saying, hey, something's happening. You can shut the card down. So number 1, freeze credit. Number 2, monitor accounts, place alerts. Number 3, and it's a big one, how many people out there use the same password or a similar password and login across multiple websites?
I got to fix that.
80%. 80% of the population does that.
That was something that I learned early on, was to have a different password for every single one of your social medias. Anything that you log into, have a different password. I have them all written down.
Those are the 3 big ones, and I advise using a password manager. Now, we just got news yesterday, as a matter of fact, that LastPass, one of the big password managers, they had been breached. Even though they've been breached, the passwords themselves were not compromised, because those passwords are 256-bit encrypted. So use a password manager. You don't have to pay for it. Chrome's got one built in. Apple's got one built in. Use a password manager. Those 3 things. Also, multi-factor authentication. That's a big one. All right. Now,
I do that.
And there's not really any cost associated with any of those things that I just mentioned. You can pay for stuff if you want to, but you don't have to. What you find is that most people on the planet have absolutely no security in place whatsoever. Most criminals are motivated by cash. That cash-based attack is looking for lowest hanging fruit, the easiest access that gives the largest return on that criminal's investment. So if you just do those simple things, credit freeze, monitor accounts, place alerts, password manager, multi-factor, if you just do those simple things, you're not going to be that lowest hanging fruit. You're going to be up in that tree farther than somebody else is. So the criminals are not going to get you. They're going to pick the easy pickings first.
It makes sense.
So you mentioned the dark web earlier, Brett, and did you know Ross Ulbricht? I believe he was
Ulbricht. Ross Ulbricht.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
he
have
was
never met Ross. Ross was before me. I do know the guy who started Silk Road too. I know him. But
Silk Road.
yeah, Silk Road. Is what,
Cheers! I'm drinking wine out of my mason
there you go.
jar.
So
Cheers when we
Ross,
talk about Silk Road.
you know, the interesting thing about Shadow Crew was basically the establishment of modern cybercrime as we know it. It stayed status quo like that until two things happened: the invention of the release of the Tor browser, the dark web, and also cryptocurrency. So Ross Ulbricht is the guy who made the first viable, real dark web marketplace. What gives Bitcoin its value is not the blockchain. What gives Bitcoin its use case and ultimately the value that it has today is the only payment form that Ross Ulbricht accepted was Bitcoin. That was it. Bitcoin was pretty worthless until Ross Ulbricht sat down and said, hey, the only payment I want to accept on this site is Bitcoin. And that's what causes Bitcoin to catch popularity at that point in time. Ross, of course, he gets caught at the public library in San Francisco. They seized $24 million back then, $24 million worth of Bitcoin from him. Today, that value of Bitcoin is well over $1 billion.
Do you know whose idea? Do you know the idea or the business plan behind Bitcoin? Do you know who created that by chance?
A guy named Satoshi Nakamoto. That's an alias that created that. No one really knows who Satoshi is. My thought, if I had to peg one guy as being Satoshi, I would say that his name is Nick Szabo, because of his writings, things like that. He's a very educated guy when it comes to blockchain and its history, things like that. There are a couple of precursors to cryptocurrency. Those precursors are eGold and Liberty Reserve. Both of those were used extensively by criminal groups. eGold, the owners of that, they get indicted for money laundering. They didn't really serve any prison time. They got sentenced, I think, home confinement, got fined. They went out of business. The gentleman who set up Liberty Reserve, again, these are precursors to cryptocurrency. It was basically crypto, just minus the blockchain. Blockchain being that distributed ledger type system. So after eGold goes bankrupt and belly up, Liberty Reserve starts out. The people who started Liberty Reserve, they are still on the United States Most Wanted list, have not been caught today. The thought is, and I think it was Peter Thiel who comes up with this thought. His thought is whoever Satoshi Nakamoto actually is, that person was on the Cayman Islands during one of these meetings that eGold had when they were talking about what they wanted eGold to be, because Bitcoin is that realization of what was discussed at that point in time. All right, so that's the thought. Now, that being said, I did have when I started this legal career of mine, a writer for the New York Times, Nathaniel Popper, he was the cryptocurrency writer for the Times at that point. I was in San Francisco. He gives me a call one night, and he's like, Brett, and I'm like, yeah, and he's like, hey, Satoshi Nakamoto just got hacked. And I'm like, bullshit. And he's like, done, dude. And I was like, okay, so what's going on?
No
so he
way.
sent me
Did he really?
Yeah, no kidding. So he sent me all these emails and everything. This guy, some person, Satoshi used to use an email address from this email provider. That email that Satoshi had registered had expired. Someone comes in his place and registers that same email address as soon as it expires. All right. The email company had not deleted any of the old emails. So all of those Satoshi emails were still in that email account. One of those had identified who Satoshi Nakamoto actually was. So this guy was blackmailing the real Satoshi to keep his identity hidden. All right. So Nathaniel, we didn't know who he had blacked out. This guy had blacked out the real names and everything else. One of the email addresses was ceramicstudios@gmail. at that point.
Everybody write this down right now.
Yeah, ceramicstudios@gmail.com. Now, you can email it as much as you want to, but it's going to ping back that it's not available. Back then, it was available. This is like 5-6 years ago. Back then, it was available. So I sent an email, and dude responded. And I was like, hey, man, I'm just wanting to know, do you like pottery or what? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, look, I said, I just want to ask one question. And he was like, before I answer your question, how did you get this email? And I told him, I was like, okay, fair enough. I got the email from Nathaniel Popper over at the New York Times, and he got it from this guy who's blackmailing you right now. Now, my question is, what do you think about your tokens being used for child porn payments, for stolen credit card payments, for all this cybercrime that's going on? And dude, even though I answered his question, he never answered my question.
They will never answer. They will never answer.
No, but I'll tell you what was really interesting. In some of those files that were sent over to me, there were some email exchanges between Satoshi Nakamoto and a CIA agent. And the CIA agent had sent an email to Satoshi saying, hey, what we're seeing now is no longer these scams that are taking place, but we're seeing organized criminal elements that are using power grids to mine Bitcoin. And Satoshi's response was, well, you're aware that Bitcoin is not an anonymous system. You can track where those payments are going. And that was the entire exchange. So, I mean, somebody in government somewhere knows who that dude is.
I know. From that
exchange.
And I hear that if we really truly find out who this person is, like within 20 minutes of finding out, everybody finds out, like Bitcoin will be nothing.
They would indict him. I don't think there's any doubt about it. That's one of the things that Peter Thiel thought was the reason that Satoshi Nakamoto was anonymous. He understood from that meeting and then what happened with eGold that whoever started that next token needed to be sure that they were anonymous the entire time.
Ryder, you have a question? Because I have a couple others, and we're running short on time, which I knew that was going to happen because 1 hour.
We are.
I know.
You know, I could come back sometime.
We're gonna have to do part 2. Definitely, yes. Brett, please. I'm, Kentucky. We bonded already.
That's right, Kentucky.
Yeah, it just really seems strange. Like all this stuff was kind of dropped like a bomb, and the lid was just kind of put right back over it. Yeah. The Stingray tech being disclosed in 2011, which they've been using since the 90s, and then Albright creating the Silk Road in 2011. The same time the Stingray technology was being disclosed, and then caught in 2013, and then also in 2013 we have the Edward Snowden leaking his surveillance stuff about the NSA, Five Eyes intelligence agencies, telecommunications, surveillance tech. It's strange how all this stuff was just dropped like a bomb and then covered up almost immediately. And then they had to have been working really, really hard, Brett, in the mid 2000s, and they had to be sweating hardcore because all this stuff was just coming out really fast.
Well, my thing is a Snowden, though. If you go and watch Web of Make Believe that you're on, and what's his name, Daniel Rigmaiden,
right?
Rigmaiden, you trained him, right? Like, were you friends with him? Like, what's up with this guy?
So I'm the son of a bitch that taught Rigmaiden how to commit the crime.
He was a beanie baby,
and then set him up to get arrested after I taught him how to commit the crime.
So he exposed what all of his conspiracy people have been talking about for a long time, about the government's always watching, before Snowden came out, right? Am I wrong? Or was that?
Yeah, Rigmaiden was doing that beforehand. Now Snowden, I'm not a big Snowden fan. I'm not. Okay. And the reason I'm not, I actually respect what Bradley Manning did. Manning had the guts to stick around. I don't appreciate somebody who does something like that and then runs for the hills. If you really believe in what you're doing,
but weren't they going to kill him?
I don't know about kill him. I mean, he had a lot of documents. This idea that the information that Snowden had, he had parsed through it to make sure that no one was going to die from that, is completely false. If you were to print out the documents that Snowden stole, it would fill a dump truck. So there was no way he could go through all those documents to make sure that no one was going to get killed or anything else like that. That's my problem with Snowden. Now, was he right about privacy? Absolutely, he was right about privacy. Nobody gave a damn back then. Now we're seeing, hey, that's biting everybody in the ass. You've got the governments that are tracing cell phone tracking locations, everything else.
I got a video here. Everybody's going to still hear us talk when I play this, so
Sure.
Nobody's going off. Nobody's being muted. It's a 4-minute video, but I'm not playing it. I'm going to play like a minute and a half of this Stingray, because that's entitled your episode 5 and 6 on.
Right.
It's called the Stingray Part 1, Part 2. Literally, Shadow Crew was doing some bad things, but revealed what the government was really doing behind the scenes. Thank God that you had a Daniel Rigmaiden, He was
very diligent.
Yes, he was. And you're very diligent too. You never gave up. So here, I'm going to play this a little bit. We're going to listen to it about a minute and a half.
All right.
Or at one of these. It doesn't matter. This can find you. The common name, Stingray. Technically, a cell site simulator. First developed for military use, it's made its way into local law enforcement. It can track a person down to the room they're in if they have their cell phone on them. Stingrays turn these into homing devices, and that's just the beginning.
These are tracking devices. This is emitting a signal. This is GPS.
Mike Mino with the North Carolina branch of the ACLU has been watching the spread of Stingrays for years.
It's my understanding that the software that a lot of these devices use is capable of capturing things like your text messages, the numbers you're calling and receiving calls from. We know for sure they're getting people's location.
Here's how it works. Cell phones are always trying to connect to nearby cell towers. A Stingray acts like a cell tower decoy. In what's called a man-in-the-middle attack, it tricks cell phones into thinking it's the nearest cell tower, phones connect to the Stingray, and police can access a range of personal information. But they don't just get intel on one phone. Every phone nearby is forced to divert to the Stingray. Calls are passed on to a real cell tower. Data scooped up stays with police.
When you ask them why they're using it, they'll say, well, we're targeting certain individuals, but the nature of the technology is so expansive that you cannot use this without countless innocent people having their data captured as well.
The I-Team has learned at least 3 law enforcement agencies in the Triangle have been using cell site simulators, but they don't like to talk about it.
That's it. So I'm going to end it that they don't like to talk about it.
They don't like to talk about it. That's true. I mean, you're tracking citizens that are not under investigation. That's right. A lot of the problem right there.
We were talking about this before we started the show, and that they have to have your phone number to put into the Stingray to correlate going around and tracking everyone's information. That's how they find you. But right. wouldn't they be able to use it just to be able to ping if that certain cell phone number or whatever it is that they're tracking actually pings? Like, what is the reason why that they're saying that they have to extract everyone's information?
So think of it like this, okay? So you're looking at one individual. You don't know where that individual is, but you have an informant that you know is going to be in the same circle as your primary target. You know what the IMEI is of that individual, that informant's phone, or the phone number of that informant's phone. So you've got Stingray running. You know where that phone is because it's geolocated. Stingray also shows every phone in that area. So you know everybody that's in that room.
Like
and
200
all their
people.
Phone numbers.
Like 200,
right.
It's 200 people.
Right. But you also know the phone numbers of everybody in that area that cell tower, that man-in-the-middle attack is hitting at that point. So you're capturing the phone numbers of thousands of different people that are not under investigation. You're capturing the phone numbers of those thousands of people that are not under investigation. The text messages, everything is coming through that box. And that is a lot of the problem of why law enforcement doesn't want to talk about Stingray, because you're getting that. You're also getting, and that's what you call a sophisticated means. So what happens is law enforcement uses Stingray to locate an individual, intercept text messages, things like that. Because it's a sophisticated means investigation, that Stingray is then hidden. Law enforcement, once they get the evidence, they backtrack and find another way to get the exact same evidence and hide the use of the Stingray device. That's one of the things that Rick Maiden found out.
Manipulation.
Because of all of his Freedom of Information requests, one of those reports says something about a device, a cell phone spoofing device. Rick Maiden was like, what the hell is this?
Do you talk to him?
I've never talked to him. Not since I was not since I set him up.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
He finds out that it says something about a cell phone spoofing device, realizes, hey, something's going on here, finally realizes it's a Stingray device. He wants more information on that. The prosecutor, because they don't want anything talked about, prosecutor says, hey, if you'll just plead guilty, we'll cut you loose today. Yeah, and that's what happened.
What happened. Boom. This is why everybody needs to watch Web of Make Believe. Brett is featured on episode 5 and 6, but you all need to watch all those. Did you watch all of them before your
I've
episodes?
not. I've watched my episodes.
Every episode.
Not gonna lie,
like,
boom, whoever did the editing, that walk with the music, man, I'm like, shit, I need that music playing around me all the time.
Badass. That needs to be your intro music to your show. You made me be proud that you were in Kentucky. So we are coming to close on the show, and obviously I would love to have you back on.
Sure,
especially
anytime.
and Ryder, you've been awesome. We'll close this out and we'll let you go, and then Ryder and I will have a few moments here. We'll talk. Beautiful. But thank you so much. And so I have your website up and everything. How can people find you? You have a YouTube too. I shared that earlier. Because sure. you've been doing some clips and stuff on there too, talking about cyber. Because what do you do now?
What do I do now? So I'm spokesperson for AARP. I'm the first chief criminal officer on the planet for Arcos Labs. I speak across the planet. I consult with people. I do a lot of free work with law enforcement, things like that. I work hard to protect businesses and consumers from that type of person that I used to be. I've got a YouTube channel, The Brett Johnson Show. Check it out. I bitch about stuff. I also talk about how to protect you from people like me. So check out that. You can contact me on LinkedIn. You can go to my website, anglerfish.com. I'll tell you this. If you're an individual, I do not charge individuals. I believe in trying to help people. If you're a company, if you got a paycheck, I've got something I can do for you. But, individuals, I truly, truly want to help you stay safe from online crime and being victimized. Emily, I want to thank you for bringing me on the show. You both were absolutely great. Thank you so much for having me on, and please have me back.
I want you back. I always try to do the questions in the chat. And I'm sorry, this is my bad. Right. I have one more question for Steve Holbrook again. I remember hearing Snowden saying that you can take your cell phone battery out and that stops the tracking. Is that true?
It just depends on whether the capacitor has any residual energy left in it, and most phones do these days. That's why you'll see, for example, with your if you're a computer nut and you're talking about trying to reset your computer, sometimes they'll say unplug the computer, then press the power button a few times, and it gets all the residual energy out. Cell phones are no different than that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brett. Ryder, you have anything? You need to go and Raised by Giants with Ryder.
I will do that. Yeah, Ryder.
Let's do it, Brett. Thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate you.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye. All right, Ryder, thank you so much. So what do you think about it all?
Hey, I think that there's a lot going on here, and he has, his experiences and what he's worked on and what he's done is very valuable information. I mean, you can learn a lot from somebody like that, how the internet works, how the scams work, how everything, is all kind of tied in. And I definitely think that there's a huge connection here to the fraud of the voting and stuff, the Stingray operations, how we didn't really get too much into the Stingray, like kind of what I wanted to really get into, because I think that's really important. After watching that documentary on Netflix, I wanted to throw my phone away last night. I was like, nah, get that thing out of here.
Nobody's really watching that either. I don't think the documentary is kind of pushed out with other shows that were coming out. and things. So we're going to have Brett on for part 2. And Ryder, thank you so much for stepping in. I truly appreciate you. You're one of my dearest friends, and I love your shows. Please, everybody, go over Raised by Giants on YouTube. And where else can they find you again?
Anywhere podcasts are served, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon, anywhere you listen to podcasts, on Rockfin, Odyssey, any of those places. I think I have some videos up on Rumble, but I haven't quite figured out Rumble yet. But basically anywhere you can find me. Find me on Instagram, Facebook, Raised by Giants. And thank you, Emily. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much. We'll be live here next Wednesday for a really special part 2 with Sawyer and Kathy from Heaven's Gate 25 years later. Heaven's Gates, if you know what happened in that, like in the late 1990s, the suicide cult, I think it was 29 or 39 people that committed suicide. We're going to be here part 2 on Wednesday, August the 31st at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, Ryder. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please share this out. This helps our show. It helps our network. It helps our guests. And we appreciate y'all. Have a great weekend. We love you. See you next time, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on RU Media Network.